Public comments, do we have any?
Just Mr. Bowden.
I'll be very brief today. Today probably accomplished more than anything in the last 5 years. Starting with Metro North and comments by you, Norm, and others. It changed the culture of the MTA. What was said by a lot of people changed the thinking. It's going forward in ways that I would not have imagined a week ago. So I just want you to know, I've had a very successful day, met with a lot of people, and there is incredible forward movement. Looking forward to enjoying it.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Anyone else?
That's it.
That's it? All right.
Yes. The Bridge and Tunnel Committee Charter Review was removed from November work plan because the Corporate Governance Committee and the full board completed the annual review of the charters in March.
I don't care about the contrary. Report on operations.
No, my remarks, sir.
Mr. President.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start off today's meeting by recognizing some heroic bridge and tunnel officers for life-saving actions that were associated with two separate incidences. So first, on September 29th, Officer James Pokra successfully intervened to prevent a motorist from jumping off the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Officer Pokras was on patrol and responded to what appeared to be a disabled vehicle. He saw the driver exit the vehicle and begin to climb over the side railing of the bridge. Officer Pokras called for assistance and then pulled the driver to safety, maintained their safety until emergency medical services arrived, and escorted the individual to the hospital for further medical care. In recognition of his outstanding actions in the line of duty, I am pleased to present a plaque to Officer James Pokras as a token of our appreciation. Officer Pokras, could you please join me? In addition, on September 4th, officers Nicole Murray and Alonzo Key were on patrol responding to what appeared to be a disabled MTA bus. However, upon boarding the bus, they discovered that an infant on board was not breathing. Officer Murray responded and, consistent with our training, administered CPR. Immediately thereafter, the infant began to cry. After transport to the hospital, the infant was treated and later released. In recognition of their outstanding actions in the line of duty, I am pleased to present plaques to Officer Nicole Murray and Alonzo Key as tokens of our appreciations. Could Officers Murray and Key please join me? Finally, MTA Bridge and Tunnel officers and maintainers also played a key role in hosting the start of the 48th New York City Marathon at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge on Sunday, November 4th. The event has grown from 50 participants in 1970 to about 50,000 in 2018. Thanks to the combined effort of MTA Bridges and Tunnels, New York City Police Department, and Departments of Sanitation, New York Roadrunners, and 12,000 volunteers throughout the city, the event got off to a good start and ended safely. In closing, I will use this opportunity to thank all of our B&T field staff who work tirelessly day in and day out to deliver safe, efficient customer service. Commissioner, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Report on operations begins on page 18. We'll be reporting on September of 2018. The following is a summary of traffic levels compared to the previous year. Traffic was 2.3% higher in September 2018. Through year-to-date September 2018, in our continuing efforts to target unsafe driver behavior, Bridge Tunnel officers have issued 3% more speeding summonses and 5% more unsafe lane change failed to signal summonses when compared to this period last year. We are also continuing our targeted enforcement of cell phone and texting violations. This information is found on page 36 of your Bridge and Tunnel Committee report. Unless there are questions, this concludes the report on operations.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Safety.
The safety report begins on page 31. The following are highlights of performance indicators for the month of September 2018. Enforcement of safety regulations and other actions are resulting in significant improvements in customer safety. September marks the 12th consecutive month of year-over-year improvements in B&T's collision rate. For the 12-month through September 2018, there were 6.49 collisions per million vehicles, significantly better than the rate of 8.49 for the previous 12 months and the 7.0 rate for the 12 months prior to that. The 12-month injury collision rate for September was 0.99 per million vehicles, slightly higher than the previous 12-month period, but lower than the 1.04 rate reported last month for the 12 months ending in August. Employee and contractor safety metrics are as follows. Lost time injury rates for the 12 months through September were higher in the previous 12 months. B&T is focused on exploring ergonomic adjustments to mitigate injuries associated with entering and exit vehicles. There was a reduction of these types of injuries in the month of October. The construction injury rate continued to decline for the 12 months through September. It was 31% lower than the previous 12 months. And this concludes the safety report.
Any questions? Any questions or comments concerning safety? Customer Environment Survey.
Yes. The Customer Environment Survey begins on page 37, and some highlights for the third quarter are, as part of B&T's collision mitigation efforts and State of Good Repair program, over 161,000 linear feet of striping was completed in the third quarter 2018, bringing the year-to-date total to over 365,000 linear feet striped. There were 408 potholes repaired in the third quarter 2018, as compared to 659 for the same period in 2017. In the third quarter, nearly 96% of lighting was in service, as compared to 88% for the same period in 2017. 81% of the roadway lighting is now LED. Post-cashless tolling peak period travel time across all facilities averaged 11.4% better than pre-cashless tolling travel time in the third quarter 2018. Year-to-date travel time savings is 14.7% overall. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the Customer Environment Report.
No questions? Cashless tolling.
The September 2018 report on cashless tolling begins on page 48. September highlights are on pages 49 and 50 and include our overall EasyPass market share, which is at 94.2%, up 2.1% from the year before. Our revenue collection rates by facility through September 2018 are shown on table 6 on page 53. In total, the combined collection rate for all facilities through March 2018 is at 100%. This is based on a 6-month look back of payments. Now that all of our facilities are operational with cashless tolling for at least 1 full year, our data shows that some facilities take longer than 6 months to achieve the revenue collection rate of 100%. So when October data is available next month, B&T will, for the first time, have a full year of revenue collection data for all facilities. Therefore, in next month's report, we are transitioning our reporting on revenue collection performance to reflect a 12-month look back of payments, which provides a more complete representation of actual performance levels to date. Regarding customer center, service center metrics on table 7 on page 54, we are showing increasingly longer waiting calls for the general EC Pass and violations call units, which are well below their performance standards at this time. For reference, the standard requires 80% of calls to be answered within 45 seconds or less. We are currently averaging 2 minutes and 13 seconds and 2 minutes and 53 seconds for the general EC Pass and violations queues, respectively. There are two primary reasons for this. First, during the last 3 months, our service provider was in the process of migrating their data center to another location, which affected response and processing times on their website and resulted in higher call volumes for customers who were looking for a faster resolution of their issues. And the second is that the Staten Island call center was experiencing higher volumes of staff turnover this summer, resulting in insufficient coverage to answer the volume of incoming calls. We are working with our service provider to address these issues and have imposed penalties for not meeting the performance standards. We have been given assurances that corrective actions are being implemented as quickly as possible. Early November performance reports do show that the call waiting times are back to contractually mandated service levels, and we will continue to monitor the situation and report on progress to this committee accordingly. This concludes the report on cashless tolling.
Any questions? I have one then. Can you tell me, or do you have any data that shows a trend as to whether the number of violations by mail is increasing, decreasing, or remaining stagnant?
We do. It is showing a decline. When we look at all the previous months from January, we did plot that, and it's showing a decline.
And secondly, do you have any data that shows or gives an indication of a trend that shows that the amount of fines collected for failure to pay the tolls has either increased, remained stagnant, or decreased?
I think it's also on a reducing trend, a decreasing trend as well, the fees, which means people, I think, are paying the tolls more. That's how we're seeing it
That's
as
exactly the third question I was going to ask. So there's a greater indication of payment of tolls. Is that correct?
That's what we're seeing in our data at this time.
Now, I have one last question, which is maybe in your department or not. On the Verrazano Bridge, I understand you have what is effectively an HOV lane. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that HOV lane is enforced or monitored by cameras. Is that correct?
Yes.
As I have privately said to President Fulton, I'd like to take a look at whether that monitoring program can someday be expanded as a toll collection program, if that's possible, for determining whether or not there are people, as I have done too often, in single passenger cars, which compounds the problem of congestion. So if we could do that so that we can find out, we may find a new tool for decreasing congestion. All right?
We'll certainly take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Nope. Financial report.
The financial report for September begins on page 57. We are comparing results against the July mid-year forecast. Toll revenue year-to-date in September was $1.471 billion, which is 0.5% or $7.5 million better than budget. Year-to-date traffic in September was 240.5 million crossings, up against forecast by 0.9% or 2.1 million crossings. Total expenses were $375.8 million through September, which is about $27.4 million or 6.8% lower than forecast. Our support to mass transit was $839.7 million through September, which is $49.3 million or 6.2% better than forecast. This concludes the financial report.
Questions, comments? Hearing none. Capital program.
Report on the capital program begins on page 70. In October, B&T awarded 8 commitments totaling $39 million. The most significant commitment made in October was a $36.5 million design build project at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge for tower pier rehabilitation, construction of a mooring platform, and elevator rehabilitation. In aggregate, 114 commitments totaling $246.1 million have been awarded year to date, against a planned 79 commitments totaling $377 million. In October, there was one major project completion at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge for structural rehabilitation, painting, and cable and suspender rope work with the value of $59.9 million. This project was completed 2 months ahead of schedule. Year to date, B&T has completed 7 projects with a total value of $871 million, achieving 100.3% of the year-to-date goal of $868.3 million and 60% of our annual goal of $1.43 billion. There were 5 closeouts in October, bringing year-to-date closeout totals to $54 million. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the report.
Any questions or comments? Procurements. Thank you, Mr. Keene.
Procurement start on page 78. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 4 competitive procurement actions this month. There are 2 competitively solicited design-build contracts. The first one is for upgrades at the Queens Midtown and UL Cary tunnels, control rooms in a negotiated amount of $28.82 million. The second one is also at both tunnel facilities for the installation of fire alarm and smoke detector systems in a negotiated amount of $17.7 million. There are 2 competitively solicited personal service contract awards. The first one is for construction inspection and administration for project VN32, VN49, miscellaneous steel repairs and overcoat painting at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in a negotiated amount of $8.65 million. The second one is for design build quality oversight for various projects in a negotiated amount of $6.57 million. The total amount committed under these actions is $61.74 million. Unless there are any questions, these procurements are described in detail in the enclosed staff summaries.
Questions? I have one. Was on the EJ Electric, was there a project labor agreement involved?
No.
Were there any restrictions on bidding based upon whether the applicant or the bidder was a member of one or another union?
No.
Good. Thank you. That takes me to diversity. Oh, I need a vote. All second made. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary-minded, abstentions. Thank you for the correction. Diversity.
Good afternoon. The Diversity Committee met on November 5th. We have the second quarter diversity report that begins on page 90, and it summarizes our workforce data, our new hires, our EEO complaints, and dispositions. I would like to just highlight 2 things. One, we have seen a reduction in our workforce of approximately 11%, and partly due to our hiring restrictions, natural attrition rates, as well as our transition from ORT in 2017 to 2018. One of the things that we are doing that's not included in the book that I would like to share with the committee is that we launched an employee engagement and diversity survey. And we did that this year. We had a 41% return rate on that. And we would like to utilize that information to address issues that impact women, minorities, persons with disabilities, as well as veterans in the workplace. So I'm really looking forward to working with our HR department, our leaders, our supervisors, our managers, and our department heads. And we're going to look at some of the strengths we had, some of our challenges, and hopefully we'll come up with ways to improve our recruitment strategies and our retention strategies to improve diversity and inclusion in the workforce. That's it.
Ms. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Moore, for providing us with those additional details. So I'd like to briefly reiterate comments of concern that I raised in the previous 3 committee meetings that I am a member of. And that has been addressed and discussed by fellow board members, the presidents of those agencies, and then the chair of our diversity committee, Chair Metzger. And it is really around the internal EEO reports. And and the claims actually, at 37% for bridge and tunnels, it is, I think, a significant percentage of our employees who are raising issues, real and perceived, within the agencies. And across the entire MTA agency, we're seeing percentages no lower than 25%, again at the higher end of 37%. And particularly for bridge and tunnel, much like Metro North Railroad and much like Long Island Railroad, 100% of the Title VI complaints are being ruled in favor of the agency. Again, admittedly, I am not on the diversity committee. I've said this before. I am not intimately aware with any of the details of these complaints, these cases, any of these situations. I have no knowledge of. But when I look, as I have, at these quarterly reports that have been provided across all the agencies, I am concerned with what I worry is an internal, again, either real or perceived culture of discrimination. And I understand and know that that is not the intention of the leadership, of the staff, but I think we have to do more than just have programs that address inclusivity, which are important, and retention and recruitment, of course, all very important, but what are the strategies to reduce those percentages of internal EEO complaints?
Let me echo the remarks made by Ms. Vanderpool. She's 100% right. One of the thoughts that I have expressed is one that is of increasing frequency in large organizations. EEO complaints tend to follow three patterns. Some that are unwarranted but are made as a defensive measure by an employee who's afraid he or she may be the subject of some discipline and wants to raise this as a defense in advance. That happens from time to time. Others are very serious. They are hard. They are issues that can be raised and that ought to be investigated and appropriate action taken on them to the maximum extent legally appropriate under the circumstances. And then there's the third that was mentioned, for example, at the last meeting of transit, of the so-called hostile work environment in a given area, whether it be gender-related or race-related or religion-related. And that's a lot harder to put your finger on. And the suggestion I have, and I'd appreciate it if you'd take a good hard look at it, is if we had an ombudsman within this agency who would take a look at all complaints that come in and filter them as appropriate. Somebody that has the respect of the people who work in the agency, somebody who's been around for a while, somebody who knows and has an instinctive feel for what's right and what's wrong. As one member of the public persists in making the absolutely correct point, it's time for change. It's time that we recognized that the Me Too movement and other like things are real and that we have to respond. And perhaps my idea does not hold water, but something along that line is essential, as Commissioner Vanderpool has correctly pointed. Is there any other business before the committee? Can I make a comment? Oh, please.
I appreciate commissioners reacting to this issue. It is very important to me as president of this organization to have a workplace where people feel as if they can come to work, they can do their job, and they can do it in a way where they feel as if they are really appreciated. And so I look at these things very much in the same way as the chairman characterized them, because at the end of the day, though, people decided that they wanted to make a complaint. And so the fact that they took the time to put it down on paper, I want this to be an organization that's responsive to it. And so to that end, I and my team here are going to focus in and make sure we understand, is it the protective action, and if so, why? Because people block for a reason. If it's real and it's hard, as the chairman spoke to, then we need to deal with it and come up with some real issues. I also know it's environmental, though. At the end of the day, it has a lot to do with culture. It has a lot to do with history. And so the key for us is to make sure people do believe that this is a new day and not business as usual, and that they can have confidence that the leaders to which they work for will be responsive to the issues that they raise. Recognizing that the answer is not always yes, and oftentimes the answer is no, but what it comes down to is how we interact with people as human beings and fellow employees here at the MTA. So I hear you, I take it seriously. My team is here with me. We stand committed to address this issue.
And now you know why this agency runs as well as it does. On the motion to adjourn. Second, all those in favor, aye, and I thank you.